There is a conversation happening about you right now, entirely behind closed doors. But it is not the conversation you are used to. It is not the toxic, frantic gossip of the people you left behind. It is not a shallow smear campaign orchestrated by insecure manipulators. Unlike those trying to tear down your reputation, this conversation is happening in a room full of heavyweights. It is happening among individuals who possess actual, undeniable structural integrity. The quiet builders. The people who do not need to broadcast their every move on social media to feel alive. They are sitting at a table, observing the exact trajectory of your life. And they are experiencing a massive, profound level of respect for what you just pulled off. But we need to violently hit the brakes right here. We are going to completely obliterate the internet's favorite spiritual delusion before it infects this reality. Social media algorithms want to sell you a highly produced, narcissistic fantasy where you are a flawless demigod. They want you to believe that this influential group is some secret society preparing to hand you $1 billion and a gold medal just because you cut off your toxic ex. They want to stroke your ego and tell you that you are magically superior to the peasants around you. Kill that fairy tale immediately. You are not a superhero. You are a survivor who is currently doing grueling, exhausting physical therapy on a damaged nervous system. These high-level individuals do not respect you because you possess a magical aura. They do not care about your aesthetics. They respect you because they possess a highly specific type of vision, and they look directly through your exterior and see your scars. To understand exactly what these people see when they look at you, we have to completely abandon psychology for a moment. We need to step into the highly secretive world of fine art authentication. We need to examine the mechanics of infrared reflectography and a specific phenomenon known as pentimenti. In the high-stakes art market, master counterfeiters are incredibly dangerous. A skilled forger can perfectly replicate a Renaissance masterpiece. They can fake the exact chemical composition of the oil paint. They can artificially age the canvas. To the naked eye, the general public, and even to amateur critics, the forgery looks like absolute perfection. But a world-class art authenticator does not look at the paint. The authenticator brings the painting into a dark room and bombards it with infrared light. Infrared wavelengths penetrate straight through the beautiful, polished surface layers of the painting, making the paint effectively invisible. The camera exposes the raw, naked canvas underneath. What the authenticator is looking for is a phenomenon called pentimenti. It is an Italian word that translates to repentance or changes of mind. When you look at the infrared scan of a genuine original masterpiece by Leonardo da Vinci or Rembrandt, it is an absolute mess underneath. You see the original underdrawing. You see brutal, heavy charcoal lines where the artist sketched an arm, realized the proportion was completely wrong, violently erased it, and drew it again. You see the hesitation, you see the struggle, you see the mechanical, exhausting effort of a human being wrestling with chaos to create something real. A forgery does not have pentimenti. A counterfeiter only cares about the final product. When you look at a fake painting under infrared light, the underdrawing is completely flawless. There are no erased lines. There is no struggle. It is perfectly executed because the forger was simply tracing an illusion. The toxic people you walked away from are master counterfeiters. They spend their entire lives tracing an illusion. They fake loyalty, they mimic empathy, and they curate these perfectly painted, highly dramatic surface lives, projecting an image of absolute confidence. And for years, you stared at their paint job and believed they were real. But the influential, high-level individuals watching you right now, they are the authenticators. They walk through the world with infrared vision. They don't care how much money you make, how confident you act, or what you post online. They look directly through your surface and see your pentimenti. They see the deep, heavy, exhausted lines where you had to completely erase your old identity. They recognize the brutal scars where you trusted a toxic family system, realized the entire structure was a lie, and had to painstakingly redraw your boundaries from scratch. They see the sheer, unglamorous struggle hidden beneath your quiet exterior. They respect you because you have the underdrawing of a masterpiece. You survived the pressure chamber, and instead of becoming a counterfeiter yourself, you chose the agonizing route of authenticity. But let's ground this in absolute, brutal reality. Let's look at a highly specific, tactical example of how this respect is actually earned in the real world. Think about a specific scenario you have likely survived recently. You're sitting at a dinner table, or perhaps you're in a high-stakes professional meeting. The room is a mix of people. Sitting across from you is a covert narcissist. It could be an old friend who secretly resents your growth, a highly competitive coworker, or a toxic relative. They've spent the entire evening looking for a vulnerability. Suddenly, the narcissist slides a highly calculated, passive-aggressive insult across the table. It's disguised as a joke. It's perfectly calibrated. To the untrained eye, to the surface dwellers in the room, it sounds like harmless banter, but you know exactly what it is. It's a piece of magnetic bait. They threw it into the water to make you generate friction. They want you to get defensive. They want you to explain yourself. They want to trigger the old, predictable version of you that used to shrink on command. Let's look at the biology of what happens inside your body in that exact millisecond. Your primitive brain sounds the alarm. Your amygdala floods your bloodstream with cortisol. The trauma response flares up, screaming at you to fight back, to secure your reputation, and to violently defend your territory. Your heart rate spikes. The old you would have taken the bait. The old you would have nervously laughed to keep the peace. Or you would have launched into an emotional argument, giving them the exact oxygen they desperately craved. But you don't do that anymore. You physically grip the floor with your feet. You manually override your own nervous system. You take a slow, invisible, highly controlled breath, and you execute a total conversational vacuum. You do not smile. You do not scowl. You simply stop moving. You lock your eyes directly onto the narcissist, and you let a heavy, terrifying, absolute silence fill the space. You let their joke hang in the air like a piece of rotting meat. You refuse to provide the social lubricant required to save them from their own toxicity. After 5 agonizing seconds of dead air, the narcissist physically shifts in their chair. Their confidence shatters. They awkwardly clear their throat and quickly change the subject, retreating entirely. You just suffocated their attack without raising your heart rate or speaking a single syllable. The surface dwellers at the table didn't even notice the war that just happened. But the high-level influential individuals sitting quietly at the end of the table, they saw the entire mechanical exchange. They saw the bait. They saw the cortisol hit your eyes. And they watched you execute a flawless, elite-level suppression of your own ego. They didn't say a word, but in that exact moment, they internally cataloged your structural integrity. They looked at your restraint, recognized the staggering amount of psychological discipline it takes to pull the oxygen out of a room, and they felt an immediate, undeniable respect. They know that kind of silence is not a natural talent. It is a weapon forged in absolute hell. But I need to point the lens directly at the hidden cost of that weapon. Earning this level of respect is an incredibly lonely, painful physiological burden. The internet will not tell you about the aftermath of that dinner party. They won't tell you that when you finally get to your car and close the door, the adrenaline crash hits you like a physical wave. Your hands might shake. You feel a heavy, profound exhaustion in the center of your chest. You did the right thing. You protected your perimeter. But your biology still feels like it just survived a car crash. You have to take brutal accountability for the fact that operating at this level of authenticity requires massive caloric energy. It hurts to be the only awake person in a room full of people who are committed to a shared hallucination. It hurts to constantly manage your own triggers while everyone around you is freely vomiting their insecurities onto the table. You are going to spend a significant portion of your life feeling profoundly misunderstood by the masses. The counterfeiters will never respect you. They will call you arrogant. They will call you cold. They will say you have changed, that you think you are better than everyone else, simply because you refuse to play along with their comfortable illusions anymore. Let them talk. Their opinions are surface paint. They are fundamentally irrelevant to your architecture. You do not need an audience of thousands. You only need the quiet, unspoken recognition of the authenticators. And they are already watching. They recognize your frequency. They see the heavy, unglamorous discipline you carry into every single room. They know you belong to a completely different class of physics. I want to drill straight down into the reality of your underdrawing. Forget the people at the table. Go back to that exact, highly specific fraction of a second. When you realized your own structural integrity had permanently changed, Not the day you set the boundary, but the quiet, internal, deeply physical moment when your gut registered that you no longer needed the crowd to understand your silence. Think about that exact evening. Or maybe you were sitting in your living room, staring at a blank wall after walking away from a massive manipulation attempt. The old conditioning kicked in for a millisecond. You wanted to call them and explain your side. You wanted to prove that you were a good person. And then, you just took a deep breath, and you physically felt the desperate need for their validation evaporate into thin air. You looked at the heavy, absolute quiet of your own reality, realizing you felt safer being completely misunderstood by them than you ever did trying to fit into their mold, as a terrifyingly calm, absolute finality took over your entire nervous system. You realized your underdrawing was finally solid. What did that sudden, freezing rush of absolute self-ownership actually feel like deep behind your ribs? Leave that specific, raw physical memory on the concrete below. Don't do it to boast about your strength. Do it for the person reading this right now who is completely exhausted. They are currently sitting at a table full of counterfeiters, terrified that setting a hard boundary means they will be exiled and alone forever. They desperately need a lifeline today. Leave your unfiltered truth for them. Show them exactly what it feels like to finally drop the performance, survive the adrenaline crash, and find the quiet. The heavy courage to walk out of the forgery and become the masterpiece. Peace.